Keto and Krime, Keto and Krime. We uncover the grime on Keto and Krime. Keto and Krime, Keto and Krime. Now is the time for Keto and Krime.
Hey everyone, Tracy here from Keto and Krime. Thank you so much to every single one of my patrons and channel members. You make this possible. And you're one of the reasons I do this. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And if I haven't said it before, thank you. I'll sing it. Thank you. Thank you for hanging in there with me and letting me geek out, not making fun of me like a lot of other people do, because I like weird stuff about crime and dark history. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to Keto and Krime. If you're a subscriber or a channel member, welcome back. If you are new here, welcome. Just so you know, and I like to let everybody know, this is a true crime, dark history, and horror movie channel. These are all things that I love. I'm a little demented, I guess you could say, but I am not the crazy Christmas tree lady. A lot of people accuse me of that, but we decorate. It's just something fun my family does. We decorate this tree with the holidays. It was a Christmas tree. Now it's a winter tree. Let it snow, and it will soon be a Valentine's tree, St. Patrick's tree, so on and so forth. I get a lot of comments about it. Just wanted to put that out there. I'm not the crazy Christmas tree lady that keeps it up all year. So, with that being said, I really appreciate you taking the time to stop by today. We're going to talk about Magda Goebels, the wife of Joseph Goebbels, propaganda chief for the Third Reich, the Nazi Party, and was considered by many to be the first lady of the Third Reich. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I have not forgotten about the Catholicism series. I will be doing the tutors for next week or the next, so you may get Joseph next week, Magda's husband, or you could get the tutors. It will be, and then if you get that one, you'll get the next one the following week. So with that being said, I want to jump right into the video. Normally, I would do a background on how the Nazis could have possibly come to power and the turmoil in Germany and Europe that allowed this great evil to rise. However, I don't want to take up 10-15 minutes of every video rehashing it, so I'll put the link to my Eva Braun video, which was last week's video, right up here. There's timestamps on it. The first 10-15 minutes is that background. And so watch that and then come back over here and you'll understand how the Nazis were able to rise to power. So with that being said, let's jump into Magda Goebels. Magda Goebels was born Johanna Marie Magdalena 𝗟𝗏𝗁 on November 11th, 1901, to an unmarried couple, a real scandal in Germany. And if you watch that first of my Eva Braun, you'll see why, but it was quite scandalous. Her mom was Augusta Bertrand, and her father was a building contractor and engineer by the name of Oskar Ritschl. They did marry a year after Magda's birth, but were divorced by 1905, so it was not the best of marriages, and there's a lot of speculation on whether she was born after their marriage, before their marriage. Just, we don't have a whole lot of her early history. There's even speculation that she was not the daughter of Ritschl, which I will talk about a little bit later. So a lot of shenanigans there with her parents. But we do know that after the split, Magda's mother could no longer care for her and was sent to live with her father in Cologne. And then in 1908, Augusta married Richard Friedlander. He was a wealthy Jewish merchant in Brussels, Belgium. So you could say, was she actually a pure German? Speculation. But once she married to the very wealthy merchant, Magda was brought back to live with them, and She was later adopted by Friedlander and was sent to one of the best Catholic schools in Brussels. There is speculation that perhaps Magda was actually Friedlander's natural child, that they had known each other before, but, there's no DNA test, so that is speculative. We'll see a whole lot of similar speculation when we get to the big man himself, the big nasty himself, Mr. A.H. When we get to his video, you will see there's lots of speculation about his background. So here, again, I just want to throw that out there. She did remain in contact with her, who she thought to be her father, 𝗟𝗏𝗁, and he was actually a member of the Masonic Lodge, which is a secret society that is still in power today. And, little known fact, the Masons were one of the organizations targeted by the Nazis. They didn't like Masons. So right off the bat, we see a couple of strikes against Magda. She was essentially illegitimate because she was born out of wedlock. The man that thought to be her father may not have been her father, was also a Freemason, and she was adopted by a Jewish man. So right away, a lot of speculation on Magda. They remained in Brussels until 1914, when all Germans, due to the outbreak of World War I, were forced to leave Germany because Germany decided the best way to get even with France was to invade Belgium. And, of course, people of Belgium didn't take kindly to that, and so they were forced to move back to Germany, where her mother did divorce Friedlander in 1914 and enrolled Magda in another school, a very prestigious ladies' college, and I will never be able to pronounce this correctly, but it was a very prestigious college, Holzhausen, near Berlin, and she was enrolled there, where she met 𝗟liche Arleshoff and her brother Chaim, both Jewish, and Chaim was an ardent Zionist. The Zionist simply means somebody that is in favor of the Jews having their own Jewish state, and, Israel was not a thing until after World War II, so he really supported the whole movement of the Jewish people going back to Palestine and starting their own country. Eventually, she started dating him, and she even wore a Star of David on her to show her support for the movement and her intentions to convert. So again, wow, how did she end up so far up in the Reich? Well, we're going to find out. Eventually, Chaim did migrate to Palestine to help with that effort and became the head of the political department of the Jewish Establishment Agency, even though he was assassinated, many believe, by Nazi operatives or anti-Zionists in 1933. While traveling by train in 1920 from her mom's house back to school, she met 𝗂𝗏𝗄𝗏. He is a rich industrialist who was in his early 40s, and he began to wine and dine her, and generally he needed help. He was a single dad of 2 children by his former wife, and 3 children he had adopted from a family friend. So he had 5 children that he was trying to raise, and he needed both a young wife and a mom for them, and so they were eventually married in 1921, and they had 1 child, Harold, born November 1st, 1921. He did demand, he was very much a Nazi sympathizer. He sympathized with the teachings of the Reich, the rampant anti-Semitism, and as a result, he required Magda to change her last name from Friedland back to 𝗟𝗏𝗁 and convert from Catholicism to Lutheran, and she did it because he was rich, and she wanted that. And so their marriage was not that happy. He was more interested in building his business, and he did that by traveling all over the world. He even had some, business contacts in the United States, so he traveled all over the world to build his business and just left Magda alone with 6 children. Well, she wasn't having it. She began to have some affairs with men closer to her age, and eventually they divorced in 1927, with her coming out on top in that with alimony and child support and custody of Harold. And so with that, she moved to Berlin, and in 1930 she attended a meeting of the Nazi Party where she was impressed by Joseph Goebbels' speech and decided to join the party and become an employee of Goebbels and the heads of the Nazis in Berlin. And as a result, she ended up working very, very closely with Goebbels, and eventually they got married. They began an affair and eventually got married. However, there was a whole controversy there.
Sorry about that. The camera was starting to flake out, and I had to switch to another camera, so I apologize for that. So there was some controversy around it. It was essentially a arranged marriage. I mean, Goebbels would write extensively in his journal, and he talked about Magda very fondly. But she was very opinionated, she was very professional, and she was not the type of woman that he thought he should be married to. You know, he wanted more of the submissive, wife that I guess Eva Braun was in a way, though Hitler would not marry Braun until the very end because he wanted to remain a bachelor. And so as a result, there was no first family of the Reich. Well, Hitler really took a fondness to Magda and decided that Goebbels and Magda would be the first family of the Reich, and essentially forced them into the marriage. And you'll see some video here, not video, but pictures of their wedding here, you'll see best man Hitler in the background. And the little boy walking behind them is her older son, Harold, who, from all reports, Goebbels was good to. So basically, they were forced into a marriage on December 19th, 1931. Goebbels was quite upset to learn how her previous marriage had ended with affairs, and was insanely jealous of any man that Magda talked to, including Hitler. But they put on a very good front, the happy 𝗂𝗄𝗃 and Harriet, German equivalent that they could possibly put on. Just as Magda's Berlin apartment had been a favorite meeting place for higher-ups in the Third Reich, so the Goebbels' home became the favorite meeting place. Basically, Goebbels and his family benefited greatly from economic success, from being so highly placed in the Third Reich. They had exclusive rights to his books that he had written, as well as publishing his journal, which you can find, after his death. He was paid up front for that, a generous amount, to be able to publish that after, because they really thought they were going to win the war, and his journal would be extensively a day-by-day history of the Reich. So these people were all up in themselves. So basically, they got married, and they started having children. 6 in addition to Harold from her first marriage. They had Helga, born in 1932, Hildegard, or Hildy, born in 1934, Helmut, born in 1935, Holden, born in 1937, Hedwig, born in 1938, and Heidrun, born in 1940. And if you see similarities between their names, they were such sycophantic followers of Adolf Hitler that they made sure all their children were named with names that started with the letter H, just like their god. The 6 children of the Goebbels family were used for propaganda in and of themselves. Here is a short propaganda video that was filmed using the Goebbels children, and I believe Magda is as well as in this, showing them as the perfect German family. They basically were used as propaganda to show Germans what they should be. So they were used their whole lives for photo ops, for movie ops, and they were even used in such campaigns as showing, why disabled children or less than desirable children, I suppose is another way that they looked at it, should be euthanized as opposed to good German children like these. So a lot of really dark stuff here, but let's take a look. So, Magda was an exceptionally good friend of Hitler, his closest female confidant, even greater than that of Eva Braun. So I'm sure there was some jealousy there. The Goebbels had both apartments and houses in Berlin as well as country estates, and the family spent a lot of time there, even though Goebbels spent most of his time away from Magda because honestly they just couldn't get along. There was a lot of arguments, there was a lot of jealousy on both sides. It was long noted that Goebbels had affairs with the actresses that were in his propaganda films. He is particularly one Czechoslovakian actress named 𝗠𝗂𝘂𝗶𝗰. That was a long-term affair. Magda had her affairs too, one with some pretty highly placed Nazi officers, and so, but Hitler wanted them to remain the first family, and so he actually ordered Goebbels to stop all the affairs. He did, except for the one with Berova, and actually from 1937 on, we assume until his death, he still carried on with her in direct defiance of Hitler, which was odd. But Hitler got involved, basically did their marital counseling, and convinced them to stay together. Now, what was Magda doing? She was hosting all of the parties. She was essentially doing the hostess work that a first lady would do, and she became, once the war started in 1939 with the invasion of Poland, began to be that, first lady in the public. She volunteered with the Red Cross, volunteered with the Army, made PR video, they did PR movies with her talking about her son Harold from her first marriage, 𝗟𝗂𝗁, who became a German Air Force pilot in the Luftwaffe. And so she became what they wanted all German women to become, the happy housewife that forwarded her man's career and supported the Reich. And that's what she did. So unlike Eva Braun, who really only lived at Hitler's estate and watched movies and had makeup, Magda was out on the streets, fueling the patriotic effort for the German army. However, she was not a staunch supporter of all of Hitler's policies like Eva Braun was. She would publicly stand behind her husband and Hitler's decisions, particularly when it came to the extermination of the unwanted people in the Nazis' eyes. She would criticize that behind closed doors, but would in the public uphold it. She also did not share the Reich's belief that they would win this war. She started seeing it go bad as early as 1943, and she would say this, but yet she was never punished. I mean, there was secret police all over the place, and she was just over there running her mouth. So, very lucky girl, you could say. She almost was kind of the mother of Germany, and I think that's why she was kind of untouchable. She's often said that, what's happening to the Jews is Hitler's wishes, and her husband has to carry it out, though once we get to Goebbels, you'll see that he was a long-time anti-Semite, as were a lot of people in Europe. Again, see my video on Eva Braun, the first 15 minutes. So basically, even her father, Friedlander, her adopted father, could be her real father, was actually sent to a concentration camp and died. So she didn't even save her father, even though she had a very checkered past. And I bet you're wondering, how did she end up in this position when there was a background check essentially done on Eva Braun to prove her pure German ancestry. Why not Magda? I don't know. She must have had some sort of spell cast on Hitler. I have no idea, but she had several strikes against her. She was illegitimate. Her adopted father was a Jewish. She dated a Jew. She was obviously not a virgin. She carried on all kinds of affairs, but yet she was untouchable. So it just goes to show that some people have privilege and some don't. However, in 1950, a young German Jew by the name of Felix Franks, after the war, he joined the British Army after migrating there after the war, claimed that his grandparents were assisted by Magda Goebels to get out. So it could be that she was actually doing good on the side that we don't know about, but we do know that her father died in a concentration camp. So a little bit of, switch up there. I hope that those rumors about her helping the Jews was true. I mean, we may never know. Magda always had a delicate health, and she also, toward the end of the war, suffered from manic depression, and her fights with Joseph increased, and then after their counseling by Hitler, they decreased, so they were able to basically have a picture-perfect marriage in the public eye, even though it was never public. It was never, great behind closed doors. And then the war turned, mainly with the failure of Operation 𝗂𝗶𝗄𝗄, which was Hitler's plan to invade the Soviet Union. They got caught by the Russian winter, and in 1944, the Russians started to push them back, doing a scorched earth, basically scorching and destroying everything in their wake, pushing towards Berlin. The Allies came ashore at Normandy and other places and began pushing eastward towards Berlin, and so basically the Nazis were in a perfect storm of destruction. And so in late April of 1945, just like all the Third Reich bigwigs, the Goebbels family ended up in the Fuhrer's bunker under the Reich chancellery in Berlin, and by all accounts were there during the final days of Hitler's life, and as it would turn out, their lives. Magda was quite depressed because she learned that Harold, her oldest son, was in a POW camp in North Africa. He had been captured there during the North African campaign. She even wrote him a letter, which I will read to you before the end of this video. But basically, according to Joseph Goebbels' journal and other records from the bunker during those last days, Hitler either pulled his most loyal people in to lean on them, or he became upset with them for some perceived crime, i.e., he had Eva Braun's brother-in-law, married to her sister Gretel, killed for supposed treachery because he tried to make peace with the Allies. It was that sort of thing, and he had learned that his former second-in-command, who will get his own video, had tried to reach out and do peace. So as a result, in his last will and testament, in a purely nonsensical thing, he decided that Joseph Goebbels would be his successor as Führer in the event of his death. However, because they knew that Hitler and Eva Braun had, decided they were going to kill themselves, their dogs, and everybody, the Goebbels decided, and even alluded to this in a radio address that Goebbels did to the nation, that a world where the Third Reich was not in existence was not a world that they wanted to live in, or they wanted their children to live in. So, unfortunately, they decided they were going to follow Hitler, Eva Braun, and take their children with them. And it was in this letter to her oldest son, Harold, that she told him what had happened. Harold, my beloved son, by now we have been in the Führer bunker for 6 days already. Daddy, your 6 little siblings, and I, for the sake of giving our National Socialistic lives the only possible honorable end. You shall know that I stayed here against Daddy's will, and that even on last Sunday, the Führer wanted to help me get out along with the kids, and she refused that offer, of course. You know your mother. We have the same blood. For me, there is no wavering. Our glorious idea is ruined, and with it everything beautiful and marvelous that I have known in my life. The world that comes after the Führer and the National Socialism is no longer worth living in, and therefore I took the children with me. They are too good for the life that would follow, and a merciful God will understand me when I will give them the salvation. The children are wonderful. There is never a word of complaint nor crying. The impacts are shaking the bunker. The elder kids cover the younger kids, and basically talking about her love for Hitler, and finally mentioned, Harold, my dear son, I want to give you what I learned in life. Be loyal. Loyal to yourself, loyal to the people, and loyal to your country. Be proud of us and try to keep us in dear memory. And so the fact that the Goebbels family, including their 6 children, who had been put up in propaganda campaigns all throughout the war as the perfect German family. The children had been used in propaganda videos where it showed them as the perfect German child versus children that perhaps had disabilities that shouldn't live. Yes, that was a thing. See my video on the Nazi Nurse Corps right up here. Decided that they would leave the world with Hitler. And on May 1st, 24 hours after Eva Braun and Hitler committed suicide on April 30th, 1945, Magda and Joseph arranged for an SS dentist, 𝗂𝗂𝘀𝗶, to inject their 6 children with morphine. Once they were out, they were dressed in their night clothes, placed in their bunks. She put ribbons in the girls' hair, and then cyanide capsules, the same cyanide capsules that Eva Braun and Hitler used on Hitler's dog and on themselves, were crushed and put into their mouths, and they didn't wake up. Let's just put it that way. There's conflicting stories about whether Kuntz did it or whether Magda did it, but all accounts lead to the belief that Kuntz just knocked them out so they wouldn't suffer, and Magda actually put the deadly tablets in their mouths. And then after poisoning their children, then they walked up to the garden, the same garden where Eva Braun and Hitler's remains were attempted to be burned, and also took cyanide. There are records that indicate that if the cyanide didn't work, that the few guards that remained had orders to shoot them. But basically, their bodies were also burned and partially buried in the garden, along with Eva, Hitler, and Hitler's dogs. Those bodies were later exhumed by the Red Army of Russia, who was the first to enter Berlin, and we don't know from that point what happened. There's all kinds of conflicting evidence about what happened to the bodies after that. But what we do know is that Magda's greatest crime was murdering her own children, because there had been several offers of smuggling them out of Berlin, but she was so afraid that people would hate her husband, and rightly so, that they would suffer for it. And there was also rumors of what the Russians were doing to people. So there had been several offers of getting the children to the Western Allies, the Brits, the Americans, the Canadians, so that they would be protected. But again, she refused all these offers because she really thought they were better off dead than alive. Her son Harold was finally released from the POW camp in 1947. I kind of lose track of him after that. But yeah, that was the end of the first family of the Third Reich. And I will be back very, very soon with another video. And until next time, Keto and Krime.